If you good, I'm better. Y'all not on my level. I just got a gold medal. Living life like whatever. I'm killing it.
It ain't about you, it's about me. I'm so fresh and so clean. I'm the best thing that you ever seen. 'Cause I'm killing it.
Great.
I'm killing it.
I'm awesome.
I'm killing it. It ain't about you, it's about me. I'm so fresh and so clean. I'm the best thing that you ever seen. 'Cause I'm killing it.
Great.
I'm killing it.
Stop me.
I'm killing it.
I'm cool. If you good, I'm better. Y'all not on my level. I just got a gold medal. Living life like whatever. I'm killing it.
I'm killing it.
Great.
I'm killing it.
Hey, hey.
I'm killing it. I'm killing it.
I'm awesome.
I'm killing it.
Stop me.
I'm killing it.
I'm cool.
I'm killing it.
Hey, hey.
I'm killing it.
I'm winning.
I'm killing it.
I'm great.
Now, today I want to talk to a very, very specific group of you, whether you're watching on television or one of our campuses or on the internet or on North Point Online or right here in the room with me. And specifically, I want to talk to what I'm going to call the 3P people. The 3P people. 3P people have these three characteristics. You have a measure of power, a measure of prestige, and you've got some stuff. In fact, you've got some more stuff than the average person. You have extra stuff. You're known for your stuff. Okay? By power, I mean that when you walk in the room, people pay attention because you're the boss. You write the paychecks. You set the bonuses. You know, you're kind of large and in charge of your environment. You're the department director. You're the division director. You run the branch. You own the company. You sit on the board. You've got a measure of power. People are a little bit careful around you because after all, you've got the power. Prestige, this can come from a variety of sources. You may not be the richest person in the room, but you're the smartest person in the room. All eyes turn to you when there's a decision to be made. You've accomplished something great. You're related to somebody great. You just kind of carry a little bit more weight than the average person. And possessions, you're just resourced. You're resourced because you worked hard and you earned it. You're resourced because you just happened to be born to the right family. You're resourced because you married into it for whatever reason. Everybody thinks you're funnier than you really are because you have more money, okay? Isn't it funny? The more money you have, the funnier you are. Have you noticed that? Everybody laughs at your jokes, and it's not that you're funny, you just have more money. And somehow you're just funnier, and everybody thinks you're right all the time. But you're resourced. So here's the thing. If you are a 3P person, you have unique challenges when it comes to this issue of pride. And denying that you're a 3P person is not humility. It's deception, okay? It's not humility. It's really dishonesty. And here's the deal. If you deny that you are a 3P person, it actually sets you up to misuse your stuff. It actually sets you up to misuse the 3Ps, and you will misusing it wisely. So the best thing you can do is acknowledge, you know what? I'm a 3P person. I got a little more power. I got a little bit more prestige, and I have, more resources than the average person. So I'm set up to be gobbled up by my pride. So I need to pay attention. So today's message is specifically for all the 3P people. Now, if you're not a 3P person, you're thinking, well, this isn't for me. I just want you to hang on for a second, and then we'll get to the story. Because here's the deal. If you would consider yourself a non-3P person, I want you to know there are over 3 billion people in the world. And I want you to look at that number. A billion is a lot more than a million, right? We throw these numbers around. There are over 3 billion people in the world that if they were to drop into your life, they would swear you are a 3P person. These are the people that live on $2.25 a day. And if they were to drop into your world and you would say, oh, no, I don't have much power. And they would look at you and say, are you kidding? You have so many choices I will never have the opportunity to make. You have so many more options. Oh, I don't have any prestige. Are you kidding? You're an American. You're a Canadian. Are you kidding me? You have so much more prestige. Oh, well, I'm not really a rich person. I don't have a lot of stuff. Are you kidding me? And if you were to be transported into their world and be told, hey, I want you to make your argument that you're not a 3P person, you would just be embarrassed. I would just be embarrassed, and it would just be like, shut my mouth and get out of here. Because somewhere in the world, there's a whole bunch of people that think every single person, every one of us, is a 3P person. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, okay, right? Somewhere in the world, there are people that look at you and you have an enviable life and lifestyle. So this is actually a message for all of us. Because in some context, we are all set up by what we have, who we know, what we can do, where we have the option to go that sets us up for this pride to grab the remote and shut us in, shut God and others out. So today I'm going to tell you a really fascinating story from the Old Testament. In the city of Babylon, Belshazzar was ruling the city. Nabonidus, his father, who was King Nebuchadnezzar's son-in-law, is also a leader, but he's leading the army. And he's at war with the Persians. Meanwhile, Belshazzar is leading and in control of the city. Nabonidus is defeated time after time after time by the Persians. He eventually surrenders the army and flees to the hills, and the Persian army under Cyrus the Great surrounds the city of Babylon. Belshazzar, who is now in charge of the entire nation, he doesn't know what's happened to Nabonidus. All he knows is that the city of Babylon is surrounded by the Persians, that Cyrus the Great has come for the city. But Belshazzar believed that the city was impregnable, that they would never get over the walls, through the walls, or under the walls. And so in his arrogance, he throws a banquet on the very night that the city has finally been surrounded and they are cut off from all help from any source. He throws a party and he dedicates the party to Marduk. Marduk was the Babylonian god. And here's what he did. It's very fascinating. Nebuchadnezzar, who was his grandfather, because Nebuchadnezzar's daughter married a guy who had Belshazzar. So Nebuchadnezzar, his grandfather, had a god collection. Here's what Nebuchadnezzar did. Anytime he conquered a city, anytime he conquered a nation, he would take the idol that represented that city or nation's god, bring it to Babylon, and make it part of his god collection. So he had all these idols from all these cities, from all these nations. So at this party, Belshazzar brings out the statue of Marduk, sets it in the middle of the banquet hall, and then has his people bring out all these statues and idols that represent all the other gods of the conquered nations, put them around or in a semicircle around Marduk as a reflection of the fact that our God Marduk can protect us from any nation and from any city. The challenge was this. When Nebuchadnezzar, many, many years before this, went into the city of Jerusalem, he went into the temple to find the idol that the Jews worship, the representation of the Jewish God. But what did he find? No idol, because the Jews didn't worship an idol. In fact, the 10 Commandments forbid, the entire law forbid ever worshiping any image. The Jews had no image of their God. This was unheard of, but they worshiped the invisible God. So they did the next best thing. They stole what they could from the temple as a reflection of the fact that they had conquered the nation and conquered the Jewish God, and they put them in there among the idols that they had stolen from all these other cities and nations. So when Belshazzar has his banquet to just revel in the fact that he is a king and they'll never take the city, he brings out the golden and silver goblets that had been stolen from the Jewish temple as a reflection of the fact that the Jewish God is out of business. And he begins to use those goblets in his party. And right in the middle of the party, and if you grew up in church, you may remember this story. Right in the middle of this party, and imagine it, okay? It's this giant city. All around are the Persians, but they can't get under, they can't get through, they can't get over. Belshazzar in his arrogance is throwing this giant party, kind of, spitting in the face of the Persians, and suddenly they hear a noise. And they look up on the wall, and the plaster is falling off the wall. And as they pay closer attention, it's as if a finger is writing letters in the plaster on the wall, and the music stops, and the party stops, and all the drinks go down. And the Old Testament, the book of Daniel tells us that Belshazzar was so afraid that his knees gave way. And he called for his magicians because nobody could read what was being written in the plaster on the walls of the banquet hall. And all of his magicians came in, and he offered them all kinds of things. I'll make you the third, and I'll make you the third person in power of the entire kingdom, because I don't know where my father-in-law Nabonidus is, and I'm number 2, so I'll make you number 3. And all the magicians stared at this writing, and no one could read it. And then Belshazzar's wife remembered Daniel. And she sent for Daniel. And Daniel, by this time, is probably in his 70s. He has spent his entire life from the time he was a teenager till he's 70 years old. And he ruled, he worked under Nebuchadnezzar. He's been a part of the kingdom, a part of the court all these years. They bring him in. He's an older man now. And he looks up at the walls, and he looks at Belshazzar and all his arrogance, and yet with all of his fear. And here's what happens next. You should read your Bible. This is unbelievable stuff, isn't it? Here's what happens. Then Daniel answered the king, you may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, he says, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar, actually his grandfather, but they use those terms interchangeably, gave your father, your grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Pause. Belshazzar, my God, the King of Kings, loaned your grandfather his greatness and his splendor. But when Nebuchadnezzar's heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory until he acknowledged that altogether the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. Belshazzar, your grandfather, who was a great king, understood that his power was on loan from the King of Kings. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all of this. In other words, this story about Nebuchadnezzar had circulated. It was common knowledge. Once he came back to his senses, once he once again gained the opportunity to reign in Babylon, he told this story. This was a story his children knew. This was a story his grandchildren knew. You knew all of this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had, this was the big offense, you had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines drank from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold and bronze and iron. And you got to picture this. So there's Marduk, who's made out of some kind of stone. And Daniel is standing there, and there's all these gods from all these cities and all these other nations. And he says, you praise the God. And he points to a gold one and a bronze one and a stone one and a wood one. You're acting like all these gods are something. Iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. No offense, Marduk. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life in all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. And you could have heard a pin drop. This is the inscription, Daniel says. This is the inscription that was written. And he reads these words, many, many tekel parson. Here is what these words mean. Many. God has numbered your days. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought them to an end. O King Belshazzar, your days are numbered. You see, for me, maybe it's just me, we're all different. This is enough to take all the wind out of all of our sails when we get too big for our britches. When I'm around people who just seem to be so full of themselves, I just want to walk up and politely say, and I never do because it would be a terrible thing to say, I just want to stop the meeting or stop the show or stop and walk up and say, look, do you know you're going to die? You do realize you didn't birth yourself and you're not going to take yourself out. There are two bookends you have no control over. I mean, I'm all about being proud of our good work and proud of what we've done. I mean, there's a good kind of pride. But this whole thing where I think I'm better than somebody else and I'm more powerful than somebody else and I mean, getting all full of yourself, you do realize this will come to an end. That you are a king, but you're not the King of Kings. You're the boss, but you're not the boss of bosses. You're great, but you're not the greatest. You do realize that. And this is the moment for Belshazzar. And all his pomp and all of his glory and all the attention he's getting from the people he has surrounded himself with. Your days are numbered. Second word, tekel. You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. You're accountable. Someone else has weighed you. Someone else has judged you. Someone else is holding you accountable. You hold all the people under you accountable. There's someone greater than you that holds you accountable, and now you must give an account. The last word, Perez. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Belshazzar, your influence is temporary. Now here's the most fascinating part of the story to me. A week or so before the Persians surrounded the city, A week or so before Belshazzar threw this big party, in spite of the fact that the Persians were at the gates. A week or so before, the Persians under Cyrus the Great, they didn't call him great for nothing, okay? Went about a mile or two up the Euphrates River and redirected the river into a swamp. The Euphrates River ran right through a portion of Babylon. It's where they got their water. It went under the wall. They built the wall over the river on two sides. They redirected the river, and for the past few days, the level of the river had dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped. And King Cyrus and Cyrus the Great timed it perfectly so that as the sun set, the Euphrates River began to dip below the lowest point in the walls of Babylon. And as they're having this party, and as Daniel is making this proclamation, the Persian army is slipping into the city of Babylon. It was taken that night, and that night, Belshazzar was executed. Because the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. Wow. You know what it means? It means for those of us as 3P people, whether you're a 3P person in the United States or Canada or South Africa or wherever you live, or if you would say, I'm not a 3P person in my community, but I'm telling you, I know there are places in the world that if you drop me in there with my resources and my influence, the fact that I could actually call someone on a cell phone and raise enough money to get out of here, I have way, way, way more influence than the people around me. Do you know what it means for us? It means that every single day we need to remember that it is a stewardship. No matter what you have, how much power, how much prestige, how many possessions, it's a stewardship. That means there are so many variables that you have no control over, that you should never, ever, and I should never, ever get all puffed up and arrogant over any of that. It has been placed in our hands. We are managing something we did not create and we will not hold on to forever because it's temporary. It's all temporary. And maybe the most important one of all, and the thing that we forget when things are going on, when we've got it going on, is that we're accountable. We're accountable. We're accountable. That one day we give an account of how we managed our prestige and our power and our possessions. And you know how we know that we're accountable? Let me read it to you this time. Because the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes.